probably heard the phrase variety is the spice of life more than a few times. Well, it applies to gaming too. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 games that offer a large variety of playstyles. Starting off with number 10, Devil May Cry 5. Now, when it comes to pure action games, there's pretty much nothing out there that matches the variety of weapons, abilities, and styles that DMC has to offer. Like, let's break it down real quick. There are 3 or 4, if you get the updated re-release, totally different characters you can play as. V, who's the most limited playstyle-wise, but also pretty unique, as he primarily uses summoned creatures to do his fighting for him. There's Nioh, who has multiple weapons and an unusual arm mechanic where he can equip a series of mechanical arms that each have their own special abilities and actions, all of which significantly affect his playstyle. There's Dante, of course, who also has multiple weapons and firearms, as well as 4 totally different styles he can switch between. And finally, there's Virgil, who has his own selection of weapons and, once again, just plays completely differently from everyone else. So, like Monster Hunter, you're still going to be doing the same thing, no matter which character you play as. Everyone's out slashing up monsters, but depending on who you're playing as, the experience is going to be extremely different. Each character has their own gimmicks and mechanics to think about, and as far as action games go, there's not a lot that comes close to having all the playstyles that this one does. There's so much to like here. And number 9 is Monster Hunter World. Unlike Skyrim, where the vast majority of your character's playstyles come from how you build your character, in Monster Hunter World, it's a lot more straightforward, at least at first. In these games, instead of having skill points, your playstyle is mostly dictated by which weapon you use. There's 14 total in Monster Hunter World, and every single one has a unique playstyle associated with it. Like, each weapon has its own moveset, abilities, special gimmicks, etc., so depending on which weapon you like, it can really alter how you end up playing the game. Someone who uses a great sword is basically playing a different game compared to someone who's playing a bowgun or like a hunting horn. Hell, even weapons that look fairly similar, like the switch axe and the charge blade, they actually play totally differently. Sure, the actual thing you're doing, hunting monsters, I mean, it's right there in the title, that doesn't change, but how you fight them very much does. So while this isn't a game where you can be super stealthy or cast a variety of spells or anything, in gameplay terms, the different weapons all function extremely differently and can really change up the experience depending on which one you choose. And number 8 is Elden Ring, and really the entire Souls series. Like, if you want to talk about action RPGs with a good variety of playstyles, you can't not mention the Souls series. The whole thing kicked off with Demon's Souls back in 2009, and ever since it's been a series that gives players tons of options on how to build their character. What makes the series unique is how it lets you pick a starting class, but from there, you're pretty much free to build your character however you want. Your stats are really the only thing that determine what you can and can't use, and it's usually a lot. You can play a nimble thief, a heavy armored warrior, who by the way can barely move, or a magic flinging wizard, and they're all viable options, especially in Elden Ring. The actual variety of playstyles isn't greatly expanded or anything in the newest game, but it's just a lot easier to try out different builds because of a few important quality of life changes. Like, they made respeccing way easier, which instantly makes it less of a risk to try new things, and they also added a lot more variety to spells, which makes playing a mage a lot more fun. Also, the whole Ashes of War system makes adjusting your weapons a lot more flexible as well. Like, Elden Ring doesn't actually offer a ton more variety of playstyles compared to other Souls games, but it makes up for it by making those different playstyles way easier to try out, which is great for people who are too afraid to try something new in like the older games. They're all great games, of course, but there were plenty of ways to trap yourself and get stuck with a crappy, useless build, and obviously that's a drag. In Elden Ring, that's just way less likely to happen, and it's all the better for it, at least in terms of what we're talking about here. And number 7, Skyrim offers stealth, magic, close-range combat, long-range combat, and other stuff. This is obvious. Skyrim's an open-world RPG that gives you tons of options right from the start. It's also been around a long time at this point. Pretty much every playstyle possible is at least somewhat viable in this game. You can be a warrior, a mage, an assassin, a thief, and pretty much everything in between. And within each of those categories are countless different ways to play your character however you choose. There's different weapon types, different schools of magic to pick from. You get different powers based on what species of character you have. And of course, there's shouts as well. There's a lot going on in this game, and because of that, everyone's going to play it just a little bit differently. Probably the biggest issue with the playstyle variety in Skyrim is that certain styles are just way stronger than others, but that's just going to happen in a game as sprawling as this one. The amount of different ways you can play is pretty amazing when you really start looking into it, and that only makes it worse when you decide to go back to the old standard entertained by, like yet another stealth archer build. And number 6 is Nioh 2. Now, in terms of variety, the Nioh games are kind of a cross between Monster Hunter, the Soul series, and Diablo. Build variety is pretty great here because the randomized loot and the soul-style combat and the weapons, which all play completely differently from one another. Unlike Souls games, the 11 major weapon types in Nioh feel significantly different from one another. Each weapon type had its own skill tree and attack strings that change depending on one of 3 possible stances, and when you put it all together, it makes every weapon just feel totally unique. Each weapon's so different, it's almost like playing a different fighting game character or something like that. Like, that's how unique they all feel. It's a system with a lot of depth built into it, and where pretty much every weapon is viable when combined with the right gear. It adds an element of strategy, and yes, that can make the game a little overwhelming at first with how much there is to learn for each individual weapon, but when it clicks, there are few games as satisfying to dig into as this one. At number 5 is Slay the Spire. Something a little different. Slay the Spire isn't an action game or really an RPG either. It's a deck-building roguelike where you select one of 4 possible characters and attempt to climb this deadly spire. Because of its roguelike nature, you never really know for sure how you're going to be playing the game starting out, but that's part of the fun of the whole thing. Each class you select in the beginning has a general playstyle associated with it, but from there, it just branches out very wildly. Depending on the cards you get, how you eventually play the game can vary in massive ways. The variety of possible builds is really what makes the game stand out from a pretty crowded genre of deck builders. It's easily one of the best out there for offering players a ton of unique ways that feel mostly viable and fun. It's sometimes got a pretty steep learning curve, like you can't just jump right into this one and expect to be an expert based on experience you understand from some other game. But Slay the Spire's got a lot to offer if you take the time to learn it. At number 4 is Fallout New Vegas. Now, what makes Fallout New Vegas stand out compared to other Bethesda RPGs is how reactive it can be. In terms of pure mechanics, there's not a lot in this game that's wildly different from Fallout 3. Like, you can use a variety of guns, close-range weapons and armor, as well as the ability to sneak or talk your way out of a lot of situations. All that stuff's pretty much the same, but the way the game rewards and encourages different playstyles makes Fallout New Vegas really stand out. Stuff like having it so you can actually use certain abilities during quests, or giving you special dumb dialogue if your intelligence score is too low. It makes it a lot more fun to mess around with different playstyles just to see how different builds affect the story. Sometimes the changes are huge and sometimes they're pretty minor, but the amount the game reacts to your actions is really great, especially when you consider it was developed basically over 11 months. Almost all the games in the Fallout series do have pretty diverse playstyles, but New Vegas is probably the most rewarding game in the series in terms of this, if only just to see how it affects things like the dialogue and the story. At number 3 is Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen. If Skyrim and Monster Hunter had a really weird baby, that's basically what Dragon's Dogma would be. Combining the open world RPG stuff of Skyrim with the wildly different playstyles of Monster Hunter make this game really unique and interesting. It's actually one of the best games out there in terms of variety, because there's tons of weapons, there's lots of interesting classes, and they all play very differently. What's really cool about Dragon's Dogma is that you don't just have the regular selection of weapons, you also get a ton of interesting special abilities to use along with them, and that adds a lot of variety to the regular combat. Just how you engage enemies changes significantly based on your class, and if you're like a wizard or an archer, you'll be firing from long range. If you're a warrior, you fight up close. If you're a rogue, you can jump onto a monster's back, crawl all over them like Shadow of the Colossus. There's a lot of possibilities. Every class has multiple impressive and flashy moves to show off, and each one plays so differently from one another that it's almost like you're playing a different game altogether. It's a great game that we kind of wish Capcom would get around to making a sequel to sometime. Even now, it's probably one of the best and most original action RPGs out there. And number 2 is Warframe. When it comes to free-to-play games, few games out there can match the depth and variety of Warframe, on top of the metric ton of different mission types and activities, including entire open-world areas and spacecraft missions. Like, it's easy to go on about different stuff, but the variety of different frames you can equip is impressive. Now, not every frame is totally and completely different, but there are some that just play entirely unique. And it's not just a few of them. A lot of these frames have multiple possible builds just for that specific frame. And seriously, there's a lot of these things. Because the game is free to play, most people never actually get the chance to experience every single Warframe, but they do a pretty good job of making it so that most Warframes are actually worth the cost of unlocking them. The major downside to all this is the barrier of entry. Just starting the game is overwhelming. But if you take the time to learn it, the level of variety on display is really second to none. And finally, at number 1 is Path of Exile. In terms of actual gameplay, Path of Exile is a lot more basic than something like Warframe. It's a game where you're spending most of your time hacking and slashing, and that's about it. But if you're looking for a game that really lets you play how you want, almost to an excruciatingly complex level, this is the game for you. Though there are only 7 character classes to choose from, you're pretty much free to do whatever you want from there, and each class is really only defined by its placement on the absolutely massive skill tree. Now throw in the skill system where your abilities and attacks are defined by skill gems that are slotted into your weapons, you've got a game that pretty much lets you do whatever you want, even to the point where it becomes quickly complicated to fully understand. There's a lot going on here, and if you want to stand a chance at higher levels, you'll have to spend the points wisely on the skill tree. But there's just so much happening and so many options here that when it comes to build variety, you really can't beat Path of Exile. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week, so if you want to see more, click the subscribe button and don't forget to enable all notifications. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.